Logic is important. Welcome to the Monty Collier Report. I'm Monty Collier. Logic is important. The truth is, logic is indispensable when it comes to understanding the Bible. So important is the study of logic that the men who wrote the Westminster Confession of Faith thought that all ministers should be trained in logic. The Westminster Confession of Faith emphasizes logic when it states the following in Article 6 of its first chapter. The confession says, and I quote, "The whole counsel of God concerning all things necessary for his own glory, man's salvation, faith, and life, is either expressly set down in Scripture or by good and necessary consequence may be deduced from Scripture." So we see here that the confession is emphasizing deductive logic. Extremely important. As important as logic is, many preachers and teachers of the Bible today have little or no training in basic logic. It's not just in the pulpits, it's not just here on YouTube, it's pretty much everywhere. But since we're here on YouTube, let's consider a group of men who call themselves Theology Matters 101. This group claims to be Reformed, yet they know little or nothing about basic logic. In a video titled Monty Collier's Logical Failure, Theology Matters 101 makes the claim that the first premise in one of my syllogisms is actually an argument. Now, for those of you who do not know, a syllogism is an argument composed of at least two premises and a conclusion. With this in mind, Theology Matters 101 claims, and I quote, "Premise 1 is an argument from silence," end quote. Well, I tried to explain to these silly men that a single premise cannot, by definition, be an argument. But they refuse to listen. The following here is an exchange that took place on their comment section about what an argument is. Let's take a look at it. Well, I begin the exchange by stating the obvious. I'm Red Beetle. I say, and I quote, "First, premise 1 in my syllogism is not an argument. It is a conditional premise. Second, the form of the syllogism is valid, modus ponens. Since Washer's article meets the antecedent of premise 1, the consequent necessarily follows. When your video questions the truth of premise 1, it proves I did not argue from silence. Since Paul and James both require imputation, pointing out the omission is not an argument from silence." In an attempt to avoid being refuted, Theology Matters 101 tries to make the claim that they did not actually say what they wrote in their video. Skipping down to line 4, we read, and I quote, "Premise 1 is not a fact. It is your premise that you base on an argument from silence." Notice it's not, now they're not claiming that it is an argument. Now they're trying to escape being refuted here by saying that it was based on an argument. Okay, let's see the response to this. Okay, here's the response. We see I'm not going to let them get away with this. I'll begin by quoting them. Theology Matters 101 states, quote, "Premise 1 is not a fact. It is your premise that you base on an argument from silence," end quote. Just like we saw previously. Now, I continue. I say, "This is not what Theology Matters 101's video says. It states, quote, premise 1 is an argument from silence," end quote. And so now I have shown that Theology Matters 101 is confused. They cannot seem to make up their mind whether premise 1 is an argument or whether it is based on an argument. But the video states very clearly that they think it is an argument. Well, the proper thing for Theology Matters 101 to do at this point is to simply retract the false claim they made in their video. But their pride won't let them do this. In fact, they switch back to claiming that my first premise is an argument. And they actually offer a definition to try to support this. They say, and I quote, "The definition of an argument is a reason given in proof or rebuttal," end quote. And they think that this implies that a premise is an argument. Well, this is ludicrous. It's so crazy that an atheist, whose name actually, which is funny, is Crazy Pills too, comes out and calls them on this. He states the following: "Although this is killing me, I have to agree with the Beetle on this one. Premises are not arguments." Everyone take note who the atheist is siding with. His little smiley face. Yeah, he loves to argue with me. Well, let's take a look at several logic textbooks and get a definition of the term argument. In Gordon H. Clark's book, Logic, page 127, we read the following definition. Argument, a connected series of statements or reasons intended to establish a conclusion. Notice there is no such thing here as a premise being an argument. It's a collection of statements connected, intended to establish a conclusion. Author Peter Smith writes the following in his An Introduction to Formal Logic, page 1. Notice it's page 1. He writes the following, and I quote, "By argument we mean roughly a chain of reasoning in support of a certain conclusion." Notice that a chain is more than one. You have to have more than one linked together to get a chain, and it, of course, leads to a conclusion. So you got three propositions at least in an argument. Peter Smith there. Finally, let's take a look at Irving M. Copey's Introduction to Logic, this time on page 7. Notice this is at the beginning of any logic textbook. It's just that basic. And he writes the following, and I quote, "An argument in this sense is any group of propositions of which one is claimed to follow from the others, which are regarded as providing evidence for the truth of that one. An argument is not a mere collection of propositions, but has structure." Again, page 7. This idea that a premise, a single premise by itself is an argument, is not part of logic. It's insane to make such a statement. I just gave you 3 logic textbooks that completely disagree with Theology Matters 101. So you got to study logic. And guys, we have to ask, got logic?